I had meant to mention that if anyone is interested in this phenomenon of Welsh bardic poetry, would possibly like to consider the ordering of a book, the book Singing in Chains, I'll leave a copy up here on the table. I'm sure you can order one on Amazon if anyone is interested. Also, if anyone is interested in seeing what the Welsh language looks like in print, I just received this week from Wales a copy of a new translation of Under Milkwood, done by my good friend T. James Jones, who's a Welsh poet and playwright with whom I've collaborated on 3 kind of bilingual volumes. And in Welsh it's called Dan y Wenach, which means under the white wood, not under milkwood, which alliterates better than Dana Wath Llaeth, which would be under milkwood. But anyway, I'll leave it on the end of the table if anybody's interested in having a look afterwards. I'm going to read a poem now called After the Funeral, which is a poem for which I have kind of a special affection, while I have that for many of Dylan's poems. But it's in memory of Anne Jones, who was the mistress of Fernhill Farm, the farm where he spent many a summer holiday, and about which he wrote Fernhill, of course, one of his most famous poems. I had an aunt myself named Anne Jones, who was my mother's sister. My mother was a Jones girl, which is the most common Welsh name. And she died at the age of 73 back in 1971. And anyway, I saw so much in this poem that kind of spoke to her, I thought as well, that I asked that it be read at her funeral. Also, when Jack Brangle and I opened Llewellyn's Pub back in 1975, I saw in an antique shop on Euclid a stuffed fox in the window. And I said, I'm going to buy that and put it behind the cash register at the pub. I think it'll become apparent what the significance of that is as I read the poem. And when a drunk at the bar would look up and see that fox behind the cash register, he'd say, what's that doing there? I'd say, well, they've got to read Dylan Thomas, and maybe you'll understand. This is, I think, as close to a pure bardic poem as Dylan wrote. He is indeed self-consciously a bard in performing a public function and praising and eulogizing his aunt. He seems to be not wanting to do that in the first half of the poem, and then takes on the mantle of the bard in the second half, and the poem actually becomes almost a physical thing at the end with the imagery, the human voice gesture in song, the monumental human voice gesture in song, and so forth. So this is called After the Funeral, in memory of Anne Jones. After the funeral, bugle praises, brays, wind shake of sail-shaped ears, muffled toed tap-tap happily of one peg in the thick grave's foot, blinds down the lids, the teeth in black, the spittled eyes, the salt ponds in the sleeves, morning smack of the spade that wakes up sleep, shakes a desolate boy who slits his throat in the dark of the coffin and sheds dry leaves, that breaks one bone to light with a judgment clout, after the feast of tear-stuffed thyme and thistles, in a room with a stuffed fox and a stale fern, I stand, for this memorial's sake, alone in the sniveling hours with dead humped Anne, whose hooded fountain heart once fell in puddles round the parched worlds of Wales and drowned each sun, though this for her is a monstrous image, blindly magnified out of praise. Her death was a still drop. She would not have me sinking in the holy flood of her heart's fame. She would lie dumb and deep and need no druid of her broken body. But I, Anne's bard on a raised hearth, call all the seas to service, that her wood-tongued virtue babble like a bellboy over the hymning heads, bow down the walls of the fern and foxy woods, that her love sing and swing through a brown chapel, bless her bent spirit with 4 crossing birds. Her flesh was meek as milk, but this skyward statue with the wild breast and blessed and giant skull is carved from her in a room with a wet window, in a fiercely mourning house, in a crooked year. I know her scrubbed and sour humble hands lie with religion in their cramp, her threadbare whisper in a damp word, her wits drilled hollow, Her fist of a face died clenched on a round pane, and sculptured Anne is 70 years of stone. These cloud-sopped marble hands, this monumental argument of the hewn voice, gesture, and psalm, storm me forever over her grave, until the stuffed lung of the fox twitch and cry love, and the strutting fern lay seeds on the black sill.